Aha.
There you go, Jeff. The
All right.
recording started.
We are recording. We are live. Well, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking some time today. I have, just a little under an hour to try to cram as much information I can into your heads about how to take advantage of the PowerShell ISE. My talk, I kind of thought I'd have some fun with Carpe Scriptum, seize the script or seize the editor, and show you some things that you may not know about or ways to use the ISE so that you can, if you're writing PowerShell scripts and codes, you can get things done faster. My name is Jeff Hicks. I am a PowerShell MVP for those of you who don't know me. And let me get my slides to work here. Nope, I didn't want to do that. All right, so as I said, I am a PowerShell MVP, and if you've got questions at all throughout the session, go ahead and put them in the little question thing. Anything that is really pertinent or immediate, I'll have Aaron jump in and ask me because I can't talk and read the tiny font in the question window, and hopefully there'll be time at the end for questions. I work today as a PowerShell author, trainer, consultant. I've been in IT for longer than dirt. I work a lot today getting paid as a contributing editor for Petri.com. I write a lot of my PowerShell content there. I still blog a bit, but pretty much any place that you want to find what I'm doing online, that's where you'll find me. Unless I'm doing courses, and then you'll find me on Pluralsight. So I have a number of PowerShell and DSC courses there if you're interested in that sort of thing. I do blog quite a bit, and I'm also very active on Twitter. There's a lot of information regarding PowerShell on Twitter, so if you are not there, you should get on and at least lurk, follow the #PowerShell hashtag, follow people hopefully like myself and a number of other people, and you'll really keep on top of what's happening in the PowerShell space. All right, so let's talk about the PowerShell ISE. First off, the reason that we have it is because Microsoft wanted to give us a notepad replacement. If you're going to be creating PowerShell scripts, the last thing you want is to open Notepad. It gives you nothing. It is a standard install on client operating systems, which is really the only place that you would need it. You can technically install it on server operating systems. It's an optional install. It requires some additional pieces from the .NET framework, so if you're running server core, obviously it's not going to work. Just if you need it, just install it on the client, because you should not be managing things directly on the server these days anyway. And I will point out that because a lot of the people that I write for and read my stuff and I train and all of that, the ISE is like the least common denominator. I spend a lot of my days in the PowerShell ISE working on scripts and tools, and I have come up with a lot of things, and that's what I'm going to share with you, to make my time in the ISE faster and more efficient. So the ISE is the tool that I use pretty much every day, unless I've got some special cases, and then I'll go on to something else. The ISE does support graphical features as opposed to the legacy console you're probably familiar with. So in the PowerShell ISE, you can do the copy and paste keyboard shortcuts. You get some really nice IntelliSense. You get syntax, coloring, and highlighting, all those things that you would kind of expect from some sort of integrated scripting environment or editor. It is also, though, an interactive console. I'm going to walk through, for those of you who have not seen the ISE, I'll give you a little tour of its features. One of the things that's really cool, especially from an IT pro perspective, is you can create connections to remote computers and each in their separate tab. So you can have multiple remote sessions running simultaneously and just kind of bop back and forth between them. And also in that interactive console, you also get the pop-up and IntelliSense. It does serve as a basic scripting editor, giving all those things that I've just mentioned. However, this is not intended, and I don't think it was ever intended, to be a replacement for Visual Studio or commercial products like Sapiens PowerShell Studio. at some point, if you really go gung-ho into scripting and developing things in PowerShell, you'll reach a limit and find, you know what, the ISE just doesn't cut it anymore. And at that point, you'll want to jump into other applications like Visual Studio or third-party products. However, that said, the ISE can be extended. I'm going to show you how you can do some of the extensions yourself, but there are also things, some are free. There's a sim add-on that you can find from Microsoft and install that adds a GUI portion to the ISE. And then there are also paid products like ISE Steroids from Tobias, who is a PowerShell MVP. Some people have really liked that. To be honest, I've not had a chance to load and play with that, so I'm not really going to demonstrate that today. But the ISE is there. It's a basic editor. It can be enhanced. Just know that it's not Visual Studio. And with that, I have hit the wrong slide. Let's come back. Oh, no, I haven't. I forgot. This is a slide that's a full screen. So this is kind of what the ISE looks like. So you have, well, I'm going to get into that here in just a moment. In fact, let's go to the ISE. All right, so we are now in the ISE, which hopefully everyone can see. I've already preloaded some notes and demos for myself for the presentation. Everything I'm going to show you, including my slides, I will make available to Aaron, and they'll eventually be a zip file that you can download. So don't feel that you have to take a lot of notes. I will share everything with you. So this is the ISE, and I'm running PowerShell version 4 on Windows 8.1. The ISE changed quite a bit when we got to version 3. Not too much change really between 3 and 4, and I can't think of anything right off the top of my head that's really significant in the ISE in version 5. But this is PowerShell version 4. So what you have here is up here, and hopefully everyone can see my cursor moving around here. This is the script pane where you can put in, create a new script, for example, type the commands that you want, hit a dash, you get the pop-up help. Now I can either select a line and press F8 or the little run selection, and it runs it here in the console. Or I can just use the console right down here, and again you still get the same tab completion. And that works just the way that you would expect it. So you can have that. You can also rearrange the windows. I typically, and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my demos, I like having things full screen, and there's a keyboard shortcut, Control-R, which toggles you between the two. So we're just going to close that. So in the ISE, so we have a number of options. We can create a new file. We can open an existing file. There's the cut, copy, paste, and of course the keyboard shortcuts work. The little squeegee here is the clear console pane. That's this down here. So if I ran get process and click the squeegee, that's the same thing as doing CLS or clear host. Go back up here. Undo and redo. If you have a script, you can run the entire script by pressing the green arrow or F5. You can open up a new remote PowerShell tab. So I can click that, specify a computer name. Let's go to Core 01. If you want, you can specify alternate credentials. I'm just going to use the same credentials. Takes it a moment, and now you can see I got a new tab. You can see it changed, and now I am on PowerShell. I'm running it in a remoting session on Chicago Core 01, and this also has its own tab for scripts and stuff. So I can do win32_BIOS, run that line, and it runs on the remote computer, and I can see the result there. So you can have as many of these as you want, and when you're done, you can just close the tab. I'm not going to save that file. Now that file, by the way, would be saved locally on my machine. It just happens to be running remotely. You can, if you want, you can also create new PowerShell tabs. So this is now an entirely new set of PowerShell sessions and PowerShell tabs. I'm going to close it. I don't really want that. Let's see what else here. I'm going to come to these last ones here. It does include a full debugger, and you also get a list of the 10 most, or however many you configure, recently edited files. So that's kind of handy. You can configure that here under Tools, Options. So here you can specify, let's come to General Settings first. You can control what you want the settings to look like in the ISE. And a lot of these you can also configure from PowerShell directly in code, and I'll show you some of that a little bit later here. You can specify if you want local help instead of online content. You can specify, we'll talk about snippets a little bit. Here is where you can set the number of recent files to show. The ISE will auto-save scripts every X number of minutes. In my case, it's 2. If by chance the ISE crashes and you have not saved a script manually, the next time you start the ISE, you'll get a message saying, hey, I didn't detect a clean shutdown, and it will reload the scripts that were auto-saved and allow you to recover information. That's really, really nice. And then here in Color and Fonts, this is where you can modify what you want the script to look like. You can change, for example, the font size, change the font family. You can even create themes. I've got some that I've imported. So let's say I want to use this Vim theme that I have. That changes, I can do apply. And now that changed, you can see in the background that changed everything. I'm going to go back to the default. And then that change will be persistent the next time I started the PowerShell ISE. So you can customize all of that. If the font gets too small, like mine just dropped back down, and I need to make this a little bit bigger, there is a slider down here. So you can adjust the font size. So you can move the panels around, which I showed you. We can resize fonts. I kind of walked through the menu items. We looked at some of the options. I showed you remote tabs. Showed you running scripts and running blocks of code. So that's kind of a really quick overview of what the ISE looks like. Now, the next thing that I was going to show you is this command add-on. So give this a moment to load up here. By default, I believe it's turned on the very first time you go in the ISE. And I'm going to create a new tab here, new script panel. This is a GUI version kind of show command. So this is all of the commands that are on my computer. And if you want, you can limit them by modules, or you can just start typing the name of a command. So let's do get sim instance. Now that module has not been installed now or loaded, so I'm going to click Show Details, which will import the module. This is a great way of creating scripts or creating commands if you don't fully understand the command that you are using. So these tabs here that you see, these are the different parameter sets that you would get with getSimInstance. The asterisk here indicates that it is mandatory, and you see it needs a string, so I could say, no, I want the Win32 underscore logical disk, and let's do CHI, my fourth domain controller. Let's do a filter, because I happen to know drive type equals 3. So basically you can fill out the form, and now you've got a couple options. I can run it. Now if you run it, click the run, what it ends up doing is putting it in the console in the command pane. And you see the font is kind of funny, so I may drop that down just a bit there. The other option you have here is to insert it. Again, insert it just puts it in the console pane. I wish it would insert it into the script pane, because actually what you're doing is saying, oh yeah, I want that to go into my scripts. Instead, what you have to do is click copy, come in here, Control V, and then you can paste it. So with show command and this little command tool, you can test out your commands, make sure that they run like this, and then copy and paste it into your script. So it's kind of a nice little feature. And this will work for any command that it finds a module for, or any module that you have on your system. So I've got all of these available to me. All right, so I'm going to close that. Oh, actually, let's do this. Let's save this, and let's save this C scripts demo. Now we'll overwrite that file. If you decide you're done with this, then you can just close it. So now, if this was the only script, my script could have as much other code as I want, and I can come here and run script or F5, and it runs that script for me. Or if I can see that that works, then I could put in maybe some other computer names, run that line. That's good. Then I can save it, run the script, and so on. All right? So that's how easy it is to kind of use some of the features to create a new script. So that is the show command. Snippets are the next thing that make working with the ISE very, very nice. Snippets are a set of little code blocks or command blocks or text blocks that you want to insert into your script file. Now they are stored under your PowerShell directory under a snippets folder. And we have a number of commands that have IC snippet in the noun. There's an actual module IC that ships. So get IC snippet will show me, and I've added a number of them, and I'm going to show you how you can add them. For example, I've added snippets for all of my DSC resources. That's why you see a lot there, plus some other ones. Once you have the snippet, you can then use the Control-J shortcut. So I can come here and say, you know what, I have a little disclaimer that I've created, and that inserts it then into my script. So if you had a new script and you have some simple snippets, Control-J, let's say I've got a comment help. Now, see, I've already created that for me. If I didn't have my old way, I might have just that and say, oh, I need my learn more block and I want my disclaimer block. So you can easily build a script, because we have a lot of stuff that's boilerplate, right? So you can just create snippets and make it easier to create your scripts in a much faster, more consistent fashion. So you can create your own. There is a command called help new snippet. Give it a title, description, and the text. So you would run a line like this. Now I've already run this line, so I've created a snippet called my name, and just to show you here, what you end up with is a file like this. So it's myname.snippets.ps1.xml, and so I've given a description, and then the text is the body of that snippet. Let me go ahead and load the snippet. So this is what the actual snippet file looks like. So there's the title, the description, and then the code block here. This is the text that actually is going to get inserted. Now you can modify this if after you've create it, you want to change it. So let's say I want to come in and change something here in the text, but the change won't take effect until the next time you start the PowerShell ISE. But now that I have that snippet, I can come here and let's do a new one here, to Control J, my name. You can see the description pop up there and put that in. So whatever I might want, I can create a snippet for. So you can go and create as many of these as you'd like. Now what I did, because I use snippets a lot, is I wanted a way to make it easy to create a snippet. So I have a function here that I wrote, and again I'll share this with you, called convert code to snippet. Don't worry too much about how this all works, because you'll have it. And I'm going to create a snippet. So I know we have a lot of SQL people. So let's say you have a script that you create, and you typically want to have it require the SQL PS PowerShell module. And again, you can make the snippet as many lines as you want, as complicated as you want it to be. In this case, I'm just going to create a simple snippet that will just insert #requires -module SQL PS. So I'm going to do that. My code snippet I've installed here under my add-ons menu, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. And it has a shortcut of Control-Alt-S. So I can do this, Control-Alt-S. It wants a title for the snippet. Let's see what I'm going to call this. Require SQL PS. Put in a comment, insert #requires SQL PS. And the author can just be me. There, now it's done. Now if I were building my script, come back over here. I've got one here for, say, requires version 4 already built for myself. And then there's my required SQL PS. Very fast, very easy, something repeatable, and it's consistent. I don't have to try to type and remember to type #requires -module SQL PS. I have a shortcut that will do that for me. And if you want to delete the snippet, you can. You can just get the snippet where the name matches whatever it is that you're looking for, or however you want to filter, because Get ISE snippet itself has no filtering capabilities. It just lists all of the files. This F8 command, by the way, works for any command, any block of code, even if it's in a comment block. So Get snippet just lists all the snippets. There's no filtering mechanism for it. So I'm going to go ahead and delete. Or if I wanted to, actually I won't, maybe I'll keep that snippet. And didn't find it because I changed the name since I created that demo, but I think you get the idea. If you delete the snippet, you'll still have it in your PowerShell ISE until you close and restart it, and then it will be gone. All right, so that is a look at snippets. And I know I'm kind of going quickly here because there's a lot I want to try to get through. So snippets. All right, extending the ISE. This is what people really are interested in. So let's close. Actually, we'll keep that. We'll just delete everything. The ISE has its own object model. And it has a object of $PS ISE. So this is the object, and then you can see all of the properties here. You can just walk your way through here. For example, the current file property is another object. You can see the full path to the script that I am in. See, it says ISE object model PS1, right? You can see the editor, the display name. You can see that it is saved. I haven't changed it. If I were to change this file, notice you get the little asterisk here. And if I were to go back and rerun this line, now you can see it's saved as set to false. So you can programmatically go through and save files. I've done that in my add-ons, which we'll get to again. The editor object is very interesting, and this is one I think you'll use a lot. I use it a lot because I can get selected text if I have something highlighted, and I can also, there are a number of methods that you can use with the editor, primarily inserting text and selecting text. So I can do things to dynamically build scripts or pull information out of files that I have open in the PowerShell ISE. This is really powerful voodoo. So I've got some examples we'll look at here in a moment. You can also look at the PowerShell tab. That is this thing here. If you do a new PowerShell tab, I have one, but you can see there's the prompt. You can see the console pane. What's helpful here is this files property. Gives me a list of all the files that are currently open. To add on, to create your own tools, the Microsoft team gave us this nice add-ons menu. Now, something shipped with the ISE, like the show command here that I showed you earlier. ISE Steroids plugs into here, the Sim Explorer, the Script Analyzer, those all plug into that. But you can also create and add your own menu choices. So let's look at that. We're going to look at the add-ons menu property, and this is part of the current PowerShell tab. So you can see here there is a, and this is built in, this display name add-ons, that's what this is here, and I have added my own submenu called ISE Scripting Geek. That's what you see here, and then underneath here are all of the additions that I have made. So I'm going to show you how you can add your own option there. So I have a little demo script here. So I want to add a option here. I'm going to add my own little shortcut to open Notepad. Now this add method, and then we're using the $PS ISE object model. It's built in. You don't have to do anything for it. It's just there. The current PowerShell tab, add-ons menu, the submenus, and then the add method. If I were to run just that, you will see that it requires a display name, a script block action, and then optionally some keyboard shortcut. So I want to add a menu option that's going to say Open Notepad. The script block is in curly braces, and this can be a PowerShell function, a script, as much code as you need it to be. In my case, I'm just going to launch notepad.exe, and I'm going to include a shortcut of Control-Alt-N. If you don't want a shortcut, then just use $null, and then you'd have to go to the add-on. So if I run just this line, I get that written to the pipeline, but now I have an add-ons, there's Open Notepad. And if I click Open Notepad, Notepad pops up, or I can use my shortcut, Control-Alt-N, and Notepad pops up. So that's how easy it is that you can add an option there. But you know, let's take that a step further. Maybe, and that's handy to maybe to open up Notepad, let's integrate the ISE and some of these other things we can do with the $PS ISE. I want to create a shortcut to open the current file in Notepad. Maybe I want to look at it in some way or print it in Notepad because the ISE doesn't have a print menu option. So I'm going to define a script block, $action. So here I'm going to use some logic. If the current file is saved, because I need to have it saved because I need to have a file path to go to, then I'm going to open Notepad, and the path will be the PSIC current file. Let me just run just that so you can see, and I want that full path. And I accidentally closed that file. Didn't mean to do that. That's where this last modified comes in handy. So I'm going to do Notepad, and it's going to open and run that full path. Otherwise, I'll display a warning saying that the file has not been saved. So that's the action I want to define. So let's define that action script block. Now what you could do is, I already have a file open here. So let's actually, I can test that. I can just use the shortcut ampersand and $action. All right, so I can see that my action worked because it found the current file and it loaded it up in Notepad. Good. Because it's easier to test this before you start adding it, because it's tedious if you add a menu option to delete it without having to do some other programmatic jujitsu or opening and closing the IC, which is kind of a pain. So I'm going to add another menu option here under add-ons. My display name will be open current file in Notepad. The action will be my script block, and then we use the Control-Alt-O. And I'm going to pipe this to out null, doing that so that I don't get, when you created the option, I don't want to see the display. I don't want to see all of that. So let's clear the screen even, and let's run just this line. Now when you want to run just a line, you don't have to select the line. As long as your cursor is anywhere in the line and I press F8, it will run that line. Now here's my add-ons, and there's that new shortcut, and it works. I can even test it with a different file. Oh, let's do this one here that has not been saved. Control-Alt-O. And there's my warning because it has not been saved. I see snippets, Control-Alt-O, different file, right? So you can go through and add, taking advantage of the object model, create all these menu options. Let's go a step further. And I want to create, or you want to create, a submenu, because you want to organize some of these like I did here with my Scripting Geek module. So we're going to create a kind of a folder, if you will. So we're going to create an add-on called My Tools. There is no, if you don't specify a shortcut or action, then it's just going to create a sub-menu. Now to make this easier, I'm going to save the results to a variable $my_menu, because later on, in a moment, I want to add a option to that sub-menu object. So if I run that, so $my_menu is what it looks like. All right, so there's just another menu object. And I apologize for jumping all over the screen here. All right, so it's a menu item object. So I'm going to define a function, and this is just a private function that's going to be used in the ISE. I'm not sharing this with anyone, so I'm not worried about the verb, noun, naming convention, or anything like that. Because I have, let's say in my scripts, I have some user information that I want to insert into the script. Now I can't really do this as a snippet because a snippet is static. I can't do anything dynamic. But I want to run a function that will create a script block that gives me the user domain, the username, the computer name, gets some information with WMI for the computer, the date, the PowerShell version, and I got a company name in here. And then once that is defined, I'm going to, in the function, insert this string object info into the text. So I'm going to define that function. I collapsed the region. When you collapse the region, it makes it a little bit easier to follow. I can press F8. Now that inserted the function. I now have that function available to me. I can kind of test that here. And let's do insert me, make sure this function works. It doesn't write anything to the pipeline, but there is the information that it inserted as a region and a multi-line comment. So I could put that, let's say I'm writing a script, and I can insert that information at the beginning of my script. Maybe it's some metadata that I want to include in my script. Now, I don't want to have to type that function all the time. That's where I want to add my own menu item. So now I can do my $my_menu, right, the menu item object that I saved, and add the insert my info, whatever you want to call it. The function is called insert me, and I'm going to add in my own shortcut, Control-Alt-I, and send that to Alt-null. Looking here, there's my tools, and there is my function. So if I come here, let's delete all this, try one more time, Control-Alt-I, there's my command. Right, so you can see how the snippets, with this and snippets, really start making things easier. Here, let's delete this again. So let's, using my, I've got requires v4, requires SQL PS, Control-Alt-I. Put in a, I don't like that. I should delete that one. I have another snippet, Control-J. Try catch. I guess I don't have. Oh, here, let's say I'm doing a simple workflow. So there we go. So that's how easy it is to start building scripts and having something that is reusable. So modifying the ISE and taking advantage of that is really cool. Now, all these changes I made, adding these will go away as soon as I exit the PowerShell ISE. So if you wanted to include things like this all the time, you would have to put these commands in your PowerShell ISE profile. Which kind of brings me to my next thing, was tips and tricks. Now before I get to that though, are there any questions that we have here? Aaron, is there any questions I need to address? Let me see if I can read them here. Anything?
Jeff, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Any questions that I need to address before I go on?
None so far. You doing?
Okay, all right. Yeah, I don't see anything there that looks. All right.
A quick question for you, though.
Yes.
So in that, when you open up notepad.exe, would it be just as easy to put in ssms.exe and have it open up Management Studio if you wanted to?
Sure. Any command that you can run, any command that you can type and to do something can go in there.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, so you can add all sorts of shortcuts to do any number of things that even have nothing to do with PowerShell.
Excellent.
Or if your command line, what's nice is being able, like I showed you with my Notepad example, being able to pass something that might be either selected text or a script to whatever other command that you want. You can use the ISE object model to get just the text that is selected in a file, which is kind of cool. I've got a number of add-ons here in my Scripting Geek that will do that. For example, where I can, if I select something, say it's a file path, I have an option here to open selected file, and it opens the file for me in the PowerShell ISE. So let's talk, before we run out of time here, I do have a few tips and tricks here. You do have in the PowerShell ISE, you have a separate profile. Here's what mine looks like. And this profile is in your Windows PowerShell, and it has a Windows Microsoft.PowerShell ISE _profile.ps1. So in this profile script, you can put all of the commands that you want, whatever you want to do, that will configure the ISE. So I have in this profile script, the only things that are in here are commands that are relevant and apply to the PowerShell ISE. So I've imported my Scripting Geek module, which defines all of this. If I wanted these options that I just showed you in my little demos, I would also put those in my PowerShell ISE profile script. And then everything would be configured the way that I want it to be. You still have, with $profile, you still have other profile scripts. There is the current user all hosts, and the PowerShell console has its own profile script. So in the all hosts script, which is this one here, profile.ps1, these are settings that would apply to the ISE and the console, or anything else that any other PowerShell application that honors a PowerShell profile script. So in this script, this one here that I just showed you, this current user all hosts, I have things like variables and functions and things, PS drives, things that I want no matter which application I'm in, the console or the ISE. If I'm in the ISE, then I need to make sure these things are set. And if I'm in the console, then I use the one for the console. And because I have some things that only apply in the console that I do. So you can use a PowerShell profile script. The profile scripts do not exist by default. In fact, this Windows PowerShell folder does not exist by default. You cannot change the path. These are hard-coded paths and names. So you just have to create the file and path accordingly if you want to take advantage of them. So using a profile, that's my first little tip here. You can start the PowerShell ISE. Normally, you'd have a shortcut menu down here to run ISE as administrator. I pinned this to the start bar because I don't like having to go to the Windows 8 tile display. If you happen to have the PowerShell ISE open, so I think you can all see this, you can also just type ISE and PowerShell will open, or the PowerShell ISE will open. What's nice with that is if you are already in an elevated session, which I typically run my PowerShell Windows, the ISE will open in an elevated session.
Hey Jeff, we've got two questions for you about profiles real quick if you got a sec.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
One is, can you have more than one profile? And I think the point they're getting at is maybe they want to develop a script under a certain profile, but once they go to push it to production, they might want something that's a little more scaled down, or something different. And
now, the profile script is, and profile scripts, all of these, let's do this, clear this. All right, so you basically have 4 profile scripts. Well, you've got all users, all hosts, and then you've got one that is specific to all users for the current machine, or for the current host, in this case the IC, and current user, current host, and current users, all hosts. So the all users ones are in the System32 directory. So you have to have admin rights to write to that. And the PowerShell ISE, the PowerShell console has a similar thing, although some of these are going to be the same, because the all users, all hosts is still the same. It's just that the current user, or the current host ones, are different. So, and they all work, you can have as many, you can use all of them or none of them, and they're cumulative. But you really can't adjust the profile. I'm not quite sure what they mean by working on something in production.
Well, the other one was to run it as a different account, and you'd have to obviously do the run as in that case.
Right, and then that user would have a different profile. The whole point of the profile is more to configure the console for the way that you want to work. It's not something that you would use to create something to run a script.
Yep. And then this next question, we'll probably have to make that our last based on time, because I know it's a little bit of a longer answer. The question is, do profiles all apply when you're in a remote tab?
That's a very good question. When you go into a remoting session, profiles are not applied. Profiles only work locally.
Right.
So even if you've got roaming profiles, if you're using the group policy with my documents being redirected, you will not get, as far as I know, you will not get profiles installed.
Right.
All right, so real quickly here, F1 help. If you have a command in the PowerShell ISE, any command loader function, as long as your cursor is anywhere in there and press F1, you get the pop-up help. That's nice and handy. You can change if you want to use online help or local help, either using the options from the object, or you can come here to General and say that you want to use local help instead of the online content. But if I uncheck this, when I do help for get service, it'll open up in the browser. Same thing as doing help get service - online. Use regions in your code. A region, you can put in some note, end region, and then you put whatever code you want in there, and then this is a nice way to collapse it. Control M is a shortcut to open and close all of them. So it comes very handy, especially if you have a really long, complicated script. Learn the keyboard shortcuts like Control M, Control R. I tend to keep my hands on the keyboard as much as I can, which is where the snippets come in really handy, because I can be working, Control J, arrow down, find what I want, or just keep typing and hit enter and insert them. And PS Edit, which is my last quick tip here, you'll notice that when I was in the editor here, if you want to load a file, you can just do PS Edit C work d.xml. All right, and then that loads up. It's an easy way to load a file. I can typically do that faster than trying to come here to open and then trying to navigate through the GUI to find the script that I am looking for. So that PS Edit trick is really handy.
That's an excellent.
So that is my quick look here. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, that was an excellent tip. It'd be great to be able to navigate over to the SSMS directory and be able to find your SQL script really quickly that way.
Yeah, and I would create a PS drive even for that, so you don't have to, so your prompt gets really shorter and you can just navigate to what you want just with the PS drive. Just put that PS drive definition in your profile.
Yep. All right, great.
Other questions that I can answer?
We don't have any more at this time. Thank you so much for doing this session for us today and letting us try this out with doing back-to-back sessions. We really appreciate it.
Thanks. I know I feel like I went really quickly here, but I'm trying to cram as much as I can. Again, I will share everything with Aaron so he can pass on to everyone who attended. I am on Twitter quite a bit, so if you've got questions, you can ping me on Twitter. You can post a question or on my blog, or feel free to email me.
All right. Thanks again, Jeff. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.